Coast to coast, border to border, and around the world, it's time for The Bill Alexander Show. The Bill Alexander Show is a guest-driven program where the topics are diverse and entertaining. Laugh and learn while you listen to one of the best hours of online radio. Now, here's your host, Bill Alexander.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Bill Alexander Show with yours truly, William Eric Alexander. All my friends call me Bill, and it's a pleasure to have you on the program today. I'm glad you were able to join us. And speaking of being able to join us, we have a guest this evening that most of you probably remember from the TV program Facts of Life, or maybe the TV program Deadwood. But her name is Geri Jewell. Geri, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm so glad you were able to join this. And because of this interview today, I actually watched an episode of Facts of Life that you were on today, just so I could be ready for having you in my interview tonight.
Oh wow, thank you.
And it was the episode where you were doing the fundraiser, and Blair was taking over, and you decided that you didn't need any help.
Oh yeah, I remember that episode.
So it's kind of nice to have you on the program because Facts of Life has been in the news over the last week or so because of a comment that one of the co-stars made about doing a reboot on the program. And did you hear about the comment?
Yes, I am aware of it.
So Nancy Cohen was on the interview program last week and made a comment that there was supposed to be a reboot, but unfortunately something happened. And she did not go into who it was or who it was dealing with. But I found it interesting that all of a sudden Facts of Life has become back into the American psyche again, that has been out for at least, 20 years?
Oh, it's been longer than that.
Yeah. I guess you're right. The older I get, the less I remember.
Which could be a good thing.
Well, it could be. So the reason you're on tonight is to talk about your career and also your new book you have coming out, which will be released next week on August 7th, called Geri's Jewels and Gems. So what is this book about?
This is a collection of columns that I wrote for over a period of 6 years for Ability magazine. And it's various topics. It's a fun book. It's a coffee table book. And it's the jewels, the columns, and the gems are the photos that I picked for the book. For Geri's Jewels and Gems. I took advantage of my name.
Yes. So this one is a much more of a lighthearted book than the last book you wrote, I'm Walking as Straight as I Can.
Say that again?
I said this book is a lighthearted look at some of the things you've wrote compared to the last book you wrote? Yes,
it's a fun book. It'll make you laugh. There are a few poignant, tearful things in it, but mostly it's inspiring and it'll give people hope.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here is because you're one of the very few actors or actresses that has been portrayed on TV, especially in a primetime program, with an actual disability. You're not pretending to have one, you actually have one, you have cerebral palsy. And how hard was it to get started in the business of comedy and acting with the disability?
To get into the business was relatively easy because I was in the right place at the right time, like anybody else in Hollywood. I started doing stand-up in 1978 at the Comedy Store in Hollywood, and in 1980 I was asked to perform for the second annual Media Access Awards. And in my audience that night happened to be Norman Lear and Charlotte Rae. And I ended up getting a standing ovation that night for my comedy. And Norman came up to me after the show and introduced himself. And he said, "You know, you're real funny, kid, but you're way before your time." I said, so wait a couple weeks, a couple months. I did not really understand exactly what he meant I knew I was before my time, but I didn't know that I was that far before my time. And 2 months later, he cast me as Blair's cousin, The Facts of Life.
So you were on, you were a recurring character. You were on 12 episodes.
Yeah, 12 episodes over a 4-year period.
Um, and did you think that the program itself portrayed, I guess, the best portrayal it possibly could have of an individual with cerebral palsy?
Well, I look back on the episodes, The Facts of Life, and I'd say the first episode was my favorite one out of all of them, Cousin Geri, the very first one. Uh, it even used some of my original comedy in the stand-up part of the show. And and I was the first person with a visible disability ever to be cast in a primetime series. And I don't think Hollywood knew quite what to do with me. I know that every time I did an episode of Facts, they would ask for Emmy consideration, and I never got one because I think looking back on it, they never had a person with a disability do comedy. You're laughing. I
Right.
mean, most people, most themes about disability were drama and sad and heavy, whereas I added a lightness, and I don't think even Hollywood knew what to do with that.
So how was it to work with Norman Lear?
Uh, it was the most incredible experience of my life. He ended up being a lifetime friend. Um, he was kind of a surrogate dad in a way.
Hmm.
He used to call me all the time. We used to FaceTime, and he sincerely cared about me. Um, that was the beauty of Norman. There's not going to be another Norman. Uh, he even wrote the foreword for this book, Geri Jewels and Gems, and he wrote that foreword at age 101,
Wow.
and he delivered it 2 weeks later.
Hmm. So recently in the news, you and Lisa Whelchel had photos taken that I guess the press got a hold of last week.
Yeah, it was. The only thing I'm going to say is it was a shame that Mindy had to say something like that on the heels of Lisa and I reuniting after some odd years, 30 years coming together.
Uh-huh.
And we had such a wonderful time together. And Lisa's a sweetheart. Lisa's going to be honest. She tells it like it is. She always has. We were even roommates at one point in the early on. Yeah, we lived together for a year.
So what can you say that did Facts of Life do for you personally?
Well, it put me on the map.
Right.
Uh, it changed how children perceived me. Uh, you know, I was ridiculed by a lot of kids when I was younger and made fun of and mimicked, and when Facts of Life aired, kids were like writing me fan letters and asking for my autograph, and they were more accepting of children with differences in their own neighborhoods and own schools after that. It was a huge, huge impact on children.
Did you receive letters from children with disabilities saying how much they were they were glad that you were portraying someone on TV, so it would make it, I don't want to say normal, but it would make it more acceptable to be seen that way?
Of course I was. I received a lot of letters like that. In fact, interestingly, later, probably I would say in the early 90s when I was performing at colleges, college campuses, students would come up to me and say, we grew up on Facts of Life, and there were some students that said they were suicidal. They wanted to take their life because of the ridicule and humiliation.
Mhm.
And they saw me, and I gave them inspiration to keep going. I mean, how powerful is that? I don't take that for granted. That's a higher power looking through me. I knew nothing about half the impact I made.
Did you feel a lot of pressure on yourself?
I didn't hear that.
Did you feel pressured because you were that role model?
Yes, there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of responsibility. Yes, absolutely, I did. And I put pressure on myself that I didn't need to put on myself. I've always been hard on myself. Uh, I think I had high expectations of myself. I was raised to. I'll give you an example. Like if I fell down when I was little, when I was real little, learning how to walk, I didn't learn how to walk until I was 4. And every time I fell, you know how mothers would come and grab their babies and go, "Oh, are you okay?" And we'd cry and be comforted. My mom would always just look at me and she would say, "Geri, was that trip really necessary?" I mean, she made me laugh. And it was the laughter. To this day, I would say one of the reasons I'm still alive today is because of my sense of humor. If I didn't have that, man, I don't know how I would cope in life. And you gotta have a sense of humor about yourself.
So, from what I can understand, then, or from what you're telling me, your parents were very supportive in your comedy ventures.
Absolutely. I mean, they were surprised, like any parent would be. Uh, uh, my parents wanted me to finish school. They wanted me to get a degree in college, and I did go to college for 3 years. And then I let them know that I'm dropping out and I'm moving to Hollywood, and I'm going to become a stand-up comic. And they couldn't stop me.
So, your life hasn't always been easy. You had some difficulties after the facts of life. Am I correct?
I've had difficulties my entire life.
But I'm talking financial.
Yeah. I, when I was on Facts of Life, I was 23 when I got that kind of notoriety and fame. Uh, but I had a manager that took advantage of my innocence and my youth, and he basically stole all my money from Facts of Life. And I never really had any kind of wealth ever. I've just survived and kept going and working and speaking and writing now, and just, putting one foot in front of the other. Although it's harder now that I'm 67. So, it's a whole new set of senior issues with cerebral palsy. And the interesting thing is that the baby boomer generation of CPers, that's what we call ourselves, the
Okay.
CP. uh, we are the most mobile and active members of society. Let me rephrase that. I don't know. I got confused for a second. I thought, what was I talking about? No, what I meant was, I hope you're recording this and you can edit later. No, but the baby boomer generation were the most active group of people with disabilities in general who went out and were a part of society, got employment, Whereas before us, most people with cerebral palsy lived with their parents their whole life,
Hmm.
or they were institutionalized, or they weren't employed at all. So now we're having a whole new ball game of seniors with cerebral palsy issues that we've never seen before, that doctors never seen before, because we're the most active in our lives. I mean, I have beat up my body. I mean, I look at having CP as being an athlete. You know how professional athletes, like basketball players or
Hmm.
whatever,
Yeah.
they're hard on their bodies, and that's what happens with CP, because you're overusing your body your entire life. Um, I'm 67 chronologically, but the inside of my body, my bones, my joints, everything is probably 105
Wow.
because of everything that I've gone through. And it's hard, but I'm so glad I'm here, and I'm grateful for every day that I'm given a chance to make a difference in the world.
So I read that you were inspired by Carol Burnett. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Did you ever have the opportunity to meet her?
Many times. Um, and I went to a show. I ordered tickets to the Carol Burnett show in 1974. I think I was 16, maybe. And that's when I met her the first time. And she has always been supportive of me, always. In fact, now I'm very close friends with one of her daughters, Jodie Hamilton.
Oh, okay. So, with everything you have done, what is the one thing that you can say has stood out in your career?
There's so many, I've been so blessed. Um, I would have to say, God, that's a hard question, because there's so many things that enter my head at once. There's Deadwood, there's Facts of Life, there's Sesame Street. I think it was I Love Liberty, when Norman cast me as I Love Liberty to play the American disabled person in 1982. And I was very young. I was a newbie, and my audience consisted of 25,000 people.
Wow.
And I was terrified. I mean, who performed that night with Christopher Reeve, God, Martin Sheen, Patty Duke, uh, God, oh, I'm sorry, that I didn't mean to make noise. uh, Patty Duke, let's see who else. Just Barbara Streisand. There were just huge, huge celebrities, and I was terrified. And I went up on stage, and I couldn't wear my hearing aids back then when I performed. I have 75% hearing loss. A lot of people don't know that, because that's a hidden disability. That's another disability that I have. And I couldn't wear hearing aids because every time I spoke, my hearing aids would whistle. So I had to take them off when I was on stage. And I got on stage and I was saying one joke after another. 25,000 people did not laugh. 25,000 people were staring at me. And I thought at that time, I saw my whole life flash in front of me. I thought, wow, what a short career. and, and Norman Lear came running up on stage, and he grabbed me. He's holding me in his arms. And he thought that I was having a nervous breakdown, because I kept trying to say my jokes and nobody was laughing. And it was so confusing. And he said, Geri, are you all right? Are you okay? And I backed away from him and I said, Norman, I said, I'm fine, but the material sucks. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, Geri, read my lips. Your mic wasn't on. I didn't know because I couldn't hear. And everybody thought that he was going to walk me off stage and that I was going to be cut from the program. And he did completely the opposite. He put his arm around me and he said, he whispered in my ear very loudly, he said, Geri, can you do this again? Are you able to start from the beginning? And I said, yeah, I can do it. So he said to the audience, he said, how many people out there want to give this girl a second chance? And everybody gave up. Everybody stood up and gave me a standing ovation. And I was allowed to do it again and kept in the show.
That program had a lot of a very young Robin Williams on it.
Yeah, that's why I met Robin. Even though I was performing at the Comedy Store, I saw him perform many times at the Comedy Store, but I never met him personally. I never went up to him and said, hey. And that was the time I met Robin Williams personally.
And you got to perform with the Muppets were also on the program. Big Bird was there also, and many others.
Yes, you remember that? Oh my God! Yep. And then years later, I did an episode of Sesame Street where I roller skated with him. So I've had an incredible career. I really have.
If you knew someone today that wanted to start in the career of comedy or in acting and that had cerebral palsy, what advice would you give them?
If you're doing it to become wealthy, if you're doing it for fame, it's neither of those reasons are good. If you're doing it because you love performing and you want to make a difference, then go for it. Because like Carol Burnett told me, I mean, we had a pen pal relationship. I began writing her when I was 12. And she told me that to get into acting in every capacity, she said there was no guarantee that I would become professional. There's no guarantees in life, period. The important thing is to put out the effort and to try. And that was very powerful coming from Carol Burnett, for a little kid with CP.
Have you any, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. With Carol Burnett, have there been any other performers? I mean, I know Norman Lear that were some big fans of yours that supported you.
I've had so many friends that have been supportive of me. David Milch, who cast me in Deadwood, and that he was an incredible supportive, inspirational person for me. I mean, I thought my career was over, and he cast me in a Western on Deadwood. So, and Ian McShane, who played Swearingen on Deadwood. Keone Young. You know, Deadwood had the most supportive cast that I have ever worked with, all of them. There's not one person on Deadwood that had an ego. We all were team players.
Did you find it interesting that all of a sudden after the Deadwood series, that all of a sudden in 2019 they decided to make a movie?
It surprised a lot of people, but it didn't surprise me. I knew it would happen. It was just a matter of when, because I knew that Deadwood was supposed to be a 4-year series, and unfortunately they canceled it after the 3rd season.
Uh-huh.
which was a big mistake. They should have just let it go one more season. And David Milch wanted to do one more big hurrah. And I knew that it would be done. What I didn't know was that I had back surgery about maybe 6 months before I got the email saying that I had to do the Deadwood movie. And I wasn't even fully recovered yet from back surgery. So I called up the production office in 2019 and I said, I can't do Jewel. Will you please tell David Milch that I appreciate his support and his belief in me and wanting me to recreate the role again, but I can't do it because I'm still recovering from back surgery. So he's going to have to recast Jewel. And the person on the phone said, are you sure you want me to tell David that? And I said, yes, the truth. I mean, I respect him enough to tell him the truth. And he called me the next day personally, and he said, Geri, it's David. And I said, oh, hi, David. You got my message. So who's going to play Jewel? And he said, you are. And I said, no, you didn't understand my message. Oh, yes, I understood your message, but you're not understanding my message. You're going to do Jewel no matter what. I will get a wheelchair accessible trailer. Hair and makeup will come to you. If we have to hire an assistant to help you, we will. If we have to make script changes because physically you can't do certain things, we will do that. But you are going to play Jewel. Do you understand me? Kind of like my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I got it. And it was physically hard for me to do, but I'm so glad I did it. It was a challenge, and again, I have been challenged my whole life to rise to it.
So are you still doing stand-up?
Not as much as I used to. I am going through a lot of physical changes, and it's very hard for me physically. I deal with a lot of physical pain on a daily basis. So I don't have the same mobility that I used to have.
Okay.
But I'm still funny.
I don't think that goes away. So the book comes out next week, and is there anything special you want to tell my audience about the book?
I did a book signing in Deadwood, South Dakota last month. They flew me to South Dakota, and I've gotten so many positive responses on this book. It's a wonderful book. Even I like it.
Well, that's good.
It is good. It's inspiring. It's funny. You'll enjoy it. You really will. Today's world has changed 180 degrees. We're all conflicted. We're all confused. The world is not the same world that we grew up in. The boomers grew up in. It's a very different world. And I think that my book will bring back some of that inspiration, some of that innocence, some of that love. We need so much more love in the world right now. We honestly do.
So where can my audience buy your book?
They can get it at barnesandnobles.com, or they can get it on Amazon. They can, it's available. It's out there. It's in print. And Norman wrote the most beautiful foreword for it. And that was his last beautiful gift for me. was writing the forward. In fact, when I told him about the book, I said, I have a new book, Norman. Can we talk about it? And he said, well, come on over to the house and show it to me. So I brought it over to the house, and I said, it's a coffee table book. I wondered if you could write the forward for it. And he said, well, I'd love to write the forward for it, but what if somebody doesn't have a coffee table? And that's so Norman.
Well, Geri, I really appreciate you taking time this evening to talk to me and my audience. It was really great to talk to you. I wish you the best of luck with the book and also with your career.
Thank you so much, Jim, for having me. Bill, why did I call you Jim?
Oh, you can call me Jim. You can call me Fred, but I mean that's.
Hey, I have a brother, Fred.
You can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for supper. That's all.
Okay, that's a deal.
Okay. Well, Geri, thank you very much, and you have a great night.
Thank you, Bill. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The Bill Alexander Show. The Bill Alexander Show is a $1 Million Baby production. For more information, go to thebillalexandershow.com.